When you walk into any coffee shop, restaurant, or retail store, you'll notice something fascinating about the people around you. Look closely at their behavior, their choices, the way they handle money. What you're witnessing is a real-time demonstration of why some people build wealth while others remain trapped in financial mediocrity. The stark reality is that most individuals are living paycheck to paycheck, and it's not because they don't earn enough money. The statistics are genuinely shocking. When researchers surveyed Americans about their ability to handle a basic $400 emergency, they discovered that 1 out of every 3 people simply cannot cover it. $400. That's less than most people spend on their monthly car payment. Yet, it represents a financial catastrophe for millions of working adults. This isn't a problem that affects only minimum wage workers or those in traditionally low-paying jobs either. This financial fragility spans across income levels, education backgrounds, and career paths. What makes this even more disturbing is that being broke isn't really about the amount of money flowing into your bank account each month. You've probably met people who earn 6 figures yet live in constant financial stress, while others with modest incomes seem perfectly content and secure. The difference isn't luck, and it's certainly not about having wealthy parents or getting some magical head start in life. The difference lies in the fundamental decisions people make with their money every single day. These decisions create patterns, and those patterns become habits, and those habits determine whether you'll spend your life stressed about money or whether you'll achieve genuine financial peace. The tragedy is that most people are completely unaware of the specific behaviors that keep them financially stuck. They blame external circumstances, bad timing, or simply not earning enough when the real culprits are hiding in plain sight. Today we're going to dissect the most common reasons why people remain broke. And more importantly, we're going to explore exactly how you can avoid these wealth-destroying mistakes. Some of these might surprise you because they're not the obvious ones that financial experts usually talk about. Others might make you uncomfortable because you'll recognize them in your own life. But understanding these patterns is the first step toward breaking free from them. The first major reason people stay broke is something that sounds almost too simple to matter, but it's absolutely critical. They operate without clear financial direction. Think about this for a moment. If you were planning a cross-country road trip, would you just get in your car and start driving randomly, hoping you'd eventually reach your destination? Of course not. You'd plan your route, identify your stops, and have a clear picture of where you're headed. Yet, this is exactly how most people approach their finances. They earn money, they spend money, they might even save a little money, but they have no specific financial destination in mind. Without clear targets, every financial decision becomes arbitrary. Should you buy that new gadget or put the money towards savings? Should you take on overtime work or focus on developing new skills? These questions become impossible to answer intelligently when you don't know what you're working toward. Financial goals provide the framework for making smart money decisions. When someone has a specific target, like eliminating debt within 2 years or saving for a house down payment, every spending choice gets filtered through that objective. The person with clear goals asks different questions. Instead of wondering if they can afford something, they ask whether that purchase moves them closer to or further from their financial target. The second reason people remain financially stuck is their complete lack of preparation for life's inevitable surprises. Remember that statistic about 1/3 of Americans being unable to handle a $400 emergency? This reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about how life actually works. Unexpected expenses aren't really unexpected at all. Cars break down, appliances fail, medical issues arise, and job situations change. These events are predictable in their unpredictability. When people haven't prepared for these entirely normal life events, they're forced to make desperate financial decisions. They might put the car repair on a credit card, borrow money from family, or even skip the repair entirely and hope the problem goes away. Each of these choices creates additional financial stress and often leads to even more expensive problems down the road. The third major wealth destroyer is living without a spending plan. Most people would never run a business without tracking income and expenses, yet they run their personal finances in exactly this careless manner. They have a rough idea of what they earn and a vague sense of where their money goes, but they lack the precise awareness that comes from actually monitoring their financial flows. This ignorance creates a phenomenon that almost everyone has experienced. You get paid, you make what feel like reasonable purchases throughout the week, and then suddenly you're wondering where all your money disappeared. Without tracking, it's impossible to identify the small spending leaks that drain your financial resources. Those $5 coffee purchases, the impulse buys at the grocery store, the subscription services you forgot about, they all add up to significant amounts over time. The fourth reason people stay broke might be the most psychologically complex. They live entirely in the present moment when it comes to money decisions. There's an understandable appeal to this approach. Life is short, youth doesn't last forever, and there's something to be said for enjoying your money while you're young enough to appreciate it. The problem arises when this present focused thinking becomes so extreme that it completely ignores future consequences. These individuals make financial choices as if their future selves don't exist. They spend money on immediate pleasures while assuming that somehow, magically, their future financial needs will take care of themselves. This isn't about being overly restrictive with money or sacrificing all enjoyment for some distant retirement. It's about finding the right balance between present enjoyment and future security. The fifth wealth-destroying behavior involves expensive habits that people often don't even recognize as significant financial drains. These aren't necessarily the obvious vices, though those certainly qualify. We're talking about patterns of spending that feel normal and justified, but actually represent massive transfers of wealth out of your pocket. Consider someone who smokes a pack of cigarettes daily. At current prices, this habit costs roughly $250 per month. Over a year, that's $3,000. Over a decade, it's $30,000, not including the compound growth that money could have generated if invested instead. The same person who spends this amount on cigarettes will often claim they can't afford to invest money for their future. Similarly, frequent restaurant dining represents another major expense that people tend to underestimate. Grabbing lunch out daily, ordering dinner a few times per week, these seemingly small choices can easily consume $500 to $800 monthly. Again, this is money that could be building wealth instead of disappearing into temporary consumption. The sixth reason people remain broke involves their relationship with debt. Specifically, their inability to distinguish between debt that helps build wealth and debt that destroys it. Not all borrowing is created equal, yet most people treat every form of debt as essentially the same. Productive debt helps you acquire assets that generate income or appreciate in value over time. A mortgage on a rental property, student loans for high-value education, or business loans that fund profitable ventures can all be considered good debt. These borrowing decisions help you build wealth faster than you could by saving alone. Destructive debt, on the other hand, is money borrowed to purchase items that lose value immediately and provide no ongoing financial benefit. Credit card debt for vacations, car loans for vehicles beyond your actual needs, and financing for consumer goods all fall into this category. This type of debt not only charges you interest, but it's also secured by assets that are depreciating rapidly. What makes this particularly devastating is that destructive debt often enables people to make purchases they genuinely cannot afford. They're not just paying interest on these items, they're also stretching their budget beyond sustainable limits, which creates ongoing financial stress and limits their ability to build wealth through investing. As we continue exploring these wealth-destroying patterns, you'll start to see how they interconnect and reinforce each other, creating a cycle that keeps people financially trapped regardless of their income level. The seventh reason people remain financially stuck reveals something uncomfortable about human psychology. They make purchasing decisions based on what others might think, rather than what actually makes financial sense. This behavior is so common that it has become a defining characteristic of the modern consumer mindset, yet most people who engage in it would deny doing so if asked directly. Watch people at a shopping mall, observe social media posts, or notice what happens when someone gets a promotion at work. You'll witness this phenomenon repeatedly. Someone buys an expensive watch not because they need better timekeeping, but because they want colleagues to notice their success. Another person leases a luxury car they can barely afford because they believe it projects an image of prosperity. These decisions aren't driven by practical needs or genuine enjoyment. They're motivated by the desire to create impressions. The psychological trap here runs deeper than simple vanity. Many people have convinced themselves that looking successful will somehow lead to actual success. They believe that if they dress the part, drive the right car, and live in the right neighborhood, opportunities will naturally flow their way. While appearance certainly matters in some professional contexts, this thinking often becomes an expensive form of self-deception. The real irony is that truly wealthy individuals often display the opposite behavior. They drive older cars, wear modest clothing, and live in houses that are comfortable rather than impressive. They understand that every dollar spent on appearances is a dollar not working to generate more wealth. Meanwhile, people who are actually struggling financially are often the ones spending the most money trying to look rich. This appearance-focused spending creates a vicious cycle. The more money someone spends on looking successful, the less money they have available for actual wealth-building activities. They become trapped in a performance that requires increasingly expensive props, while their real financial situation deteriorates behind the scenes. Eventually, maintaining the facade becomes so expensive that it prevents them from ever achieving genuine financial success. The eighth wealth-destroying behavior involves a fundamental misunderstanding about how money should flow through their lives. Most people approach their finances backward. They pay everyone else first, then hope something will be left over for their own future. This might seem like the responsible approach, but it practically guarantees that wealth building will never become a priority. Here's how this typically plays out. Someone receives their paycheck and immediately starts paying bills, buying groceries, filling up their gas tank, and handling various other expenses. If anything remains at the end of the month, they might put it into savings or investments. The problem with this approach is that there's rarely anything meaningful left over. Life has a way of expanding expenses to consume available income, and when your own financial future gets last priority, it usually gets nothing at all. The alternative approach flips the sequence entirely. Before paying any bills or making any purchases, a predetermined amount gets directed toward investments and savings. This money gets treated like any other essential expense, something that must be paid regardless of what else is happening financially. Only after securing their own financial future do they handle other expenses with whatever remains. This shift in priority creates powerful psychological changes. When someone knows they've already taken care of their future self, they make different decisions with their remaining money. They become more creative about reducing expenses, more motivated to increase income, and more selective about purchases. They're forced to live on less than their full income, which prevents lifestyle inflation and creates sustainable wealth-building habits. The ninth reason people stay broke connects to their relationship with risk and opportunity. While some people are reckless with money, others are so afraid of any financial risk that they miss opportunities for growth. They keep their money in savings accounts earning minimal interest while inflation slowly erodes their purchasing power. They avoid investing in stocks, real estate, or business opportunities because they might lose money, not realizing that not investing is itself a risky decision. This excessive caution often stems from a fundamental misunderstanding about risk. Many people view risk as something to be avoided entirely when successful wealth building actually requires learning to manage risk intelligently. The goal isn't to eliminate risk, but to take calculated risks that offer reasonable potential for reward while protecting yourself from catastrophic losses. Fear-based financial decisions also prevent people from taking advantage of opportunities that require some level of risk. They might pass up a chance to start a side business, invest in their education, or move to a city with better job prospects because these choices involve uncertainty. Meanwhile, they fail to recognize that staying in their current situation also involves risk, the risk of remaining financially stagnant while costs continue rising around them. The 10th wealth-destroying pattern involves their approach to income generation. Most broke people think about money in terms of trading time for dollars, and they never develop additional income streams. They work their regular job, collect their paycheck, and assume that working more hours is the only way to earn more money. This linear thinking severely limits their financial potential. Wealthy individuals understand that true financial freedom comes from developing multiple sources of income that don't require their direct time investment. This might include rental properties, dividend-paying stocks, business ownership, or royalties from creative work. These income streams continue generating money even when they're sleeping, traveling, or focusing on other activities. The transition from earned income to passive income requires initial effort and often some financial investment, which is why broke people struggle to make this shift. They're so focused on immediate financial needs that they can't invest the time or money required to build these alternative income sources. This keeps them trapped in the time for money exchange indefinitely. What makes this particularly challenging is that building passive income streams often requires reducing current consumption to free up resources for investment. Someone might need to live in a smaller apartment for a few years to save money for a rental property down payment, or they might need to work evenings and weekends to build a business while keeping their day job. These sacrifices feel difficult in the short term, but they're essential for long-term financial freedom. The 11th reason people remain financially stuck involves their relationship with financial education. Most people stop learning about money once they finish school, if they ever learned about it at all. They treat financial knowledge as something static rather than recognizing it as a skill that requires continuous development. Financial markets change, tax laws evolve, new investment opportunities emerge, and economic conditions shift. Someone who learned basic money management principles 20 years ago but hasn't updated their knowledge since then is operating with outdated information. They might be missing opportunities or making decisions based on circumstances that no longer exist. This lack of ongoing financial education also makes people vulnerable to bad advice and predatory financial products. Without sufficient knowledge to evaluate recommendations critically, they often make decisions based on whoever sounds most confident or whoever is trying to sell them something. They might pay excessive fees for investment products, fall for get-rich-quick schemes, or make major financial decisions without understanding the long-term consequences. The wealth building journey requires understanding concepts like compound interest, tax optimization, asset allocation, and risk management. These aren't complex topics, but they do require some study and practical application. People who commit to continuously improving their financial knowledge gain significant advantages over those who remain financially illiterate. As we've explored these patterns, you probably recognize some of them in your own life or in the lives of people around you. The encouraging news is that awareness is the first step toward change, and every one of these wealth-destroying behaviors can be modified with the right approach and commitment. The most important thing to understand is that breaking free from these patterns doesn't require a complete life overhaul or some dramatic transformation. Small, consistent changes in how you handle money can produce remarkable results over time. The key is choosing one or two areas where you're currently making wealth-destroying decisions and focusing on improving those specific behaviors. Start by examining your relationship with financial goals. If you've been drifting without clear targets, take time this week to define exactly what you want to achieve financially. Make these goals specific and time-bound. Instead of saying you want to save more money, decide that you want to accumulate $15,000 within 18 months. Instead of hoping to get out of debt someday, commit to eliminating all credit card balances within 2 years. Once you have clear objectives, every financial decision becomes easier to evaluate. When you're tempted to make an impulse purchase, you can ask yourself whether that expense moves you closer to or further from your goals. This simple filter will help you avoid countless wealth-destroying decisions without feeling like you're depriving yourself of everything enjoyable. Next, address your emergency preparedness. If you're currently part of that 1/3 of Americans who couldn't handle a $400 surprise expense, make building a basic emergency fund your immediate priority. Start small if necessary. Even $50 set aside specifically for emergencies is better than nothing. Gradually increase this amount until you have enough to cover several months of essential expenses. This emergency fund serves multiple purposes beyond just handling unexpected costs. It provides psychological peace of mind that reduces financial stress, and it prevents you from making desperate decisions when problems arise. Most importantly, it breaks the cycle of going into debt every time life throws you a curveball. The budgeting component requires honest assessment of where your money actually goes each month. You don't need complicated software or elaborate spreadsheets. Simply track every dollar you spend for 1 month, categorizing expenses as you go. This exercise alone will reveal spending patterns that might shock you. Many people discover they're spending significantly more than they realized on categories like dining out, entertainment, or small impulse purchases. Once you understand your current spending patterns, you can make informed decisions about where to reduce expenses. Focus on categories where you're spending more than you intended, rather than trying to eliminate all enjoyment from your budget. The goal is sustainable change, not temporary restriction that leads to eventual rebellion against your financial plan. Regarding expensive habits, calculate the true annual cost of your regular indulgences. That daily coffee shop visit, the frequent takeout orders, the subscription services you rarely use. Add up these amounts and consider what that money could accomplish if redirected toward wealth building. You might discover that seemingly small expenses are actually major obstacles to your financial progress. When it comes to debt, develop a clear strategy for elimination, while simultaneously avoiding new destructive borrowing. List all your debts with their balances and interest rates, then focus extra payments on the highest interest obligations first. This mathematical approach minimizes the total amount you'll pay over time. Meanwhile, commit to avoiding new debt for consumer purchases. If you can't pay cash for something, you probably shouldn't buy it. The appearance-focused spending trap requires honest self-reflection about your motivations for major purchases. Before buying anything significant, ask yourself whether you're making this decision to solve a practical problem or to create an impression. If the honest answer is impression management, consider whether that temporary satisfaction is worth the long-term financial cost. Implementing the pay yourself first principle starts with automation. Set up automatic transfers from your checking account to investments and savings accounts immediately after each paycheck arrives. Start with whatever amount feels manageable, even if it's just $50 or $100 per month. The specific amount matters less than establishing the habit of prioritizing your financial future. As your income increases or your expenses decrease, gradually raise these automatic contributions. Many people find that they quickly adapt to living on less than their full income once the money is automatically diverted before they have a chance to spend it. For those ready to move beyond traditional employment income, start exploring opportunities to develop additional revenue streams. This might involve freelancing in your area of expertise, starting a small online business, or investing in income-producing assets like dividend stocks or rental properties. These ventures typically require time and effort before they generate meaningful income, but they represent the path toward true financial independence. The education component involves committing to continuous learning about money management, investing, and wealth building. Read books, follow reputable financial websites, listen to podcasts, or take courses that expand your financial knowledge. The more you understand about how money works, the better decisions you'll make throughout your life. Remember that wealthy people aren't necessarily smarter or more disciplined than everyone else. They've simply developed better financial habits and made those habits automatic through consistent practice. Every person who has built substantial wealth started with the same basic principles we've discussed today. The path from broke to financially secure isn't mysterious or complicated. It requires making different choices with your money consistently over time. Some of these choices involve spending less on certain things so you can invest more in your future. Others involve taking calculated risks to increase your income or develop new revenue sources. What separates people who successfully build wealth from those who remain financially stuck isn't luck, inheritance, or exceptional income. It's the willingness to acknowledge wealth-destroying behaviors and systematically replace them with wealth-building habits. The sooner you begin making these changes, the more time compound growth has to work in your favor. Your financial future isn't determined by your current circumstances or past mistakes. It's determined by the decisions you make starting today. Choose to break free from the patterns that keep most people broke, and you'll join the minority who achieve genuine financial freedom. The question isn't whether these principles work, it's whether you'll apply them consistently enough to see the results.